Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello students, I welcome you back to Women's Writing lecture number 7, and in this lecture we are going to deal with the personal is political statement. What does this statement signify? What kind of meaning or baggage or interpretations statements like these have? We will be looking at them from various perspectives. So, to begin with, let us first discuss a very important issue which resulted in this idea of the personal space and the public space. Here we can call it the public-private divide. So, this private here is the personal space which originated during a certain point of time, especially with relating to the society one is living in. Initially, in the earlier days, in the prehistoric days, or even in the earliest times when history was just being written or being brought into the collective pool of consciousness, there the economy of that time mostly depended on agriculture. So, agriculture was the way in which people obtained food grains and they sustained their family. This is the idea, that was the idea of economy, and the system was barter system. What is barter system? You give a pound of grain to somebody and that somebody will give a pound of oil to you. That is exchange of goods. Exchange of services. I go and help in your household work, you come and help me during my other activities, maybe at the field, agricultural lands, or maybe taking care of the cattle. All of these aspects could be grouped under what we called as the barter system. There was no concept of money at that point of time. What happened generally in this kind of system is that both the husband and the wife, that is the pillars of the family, the husband, the wife and the child, that is what the ideal family consists of, and then there are the relatives. So, the husband and the wife, they remained in the same particular spot and they took care of the cattle, they took care of their agricultural tracts. All of those things were limited to a particular piece of land, and at this point they both worked equally, and they went, the husband and the wife, they went to the fields, they worked over there. The husband also helped in the household chores. All of the work was very well distributed, and at the supper time everybody gathered and had supper and discussed the plans of the future. So, this kind of life did not have anything called the public life and the private life, because at that time there were no cities, there were no towns, and there were only the village area where everybody knew what is going on in the other houses. So, there was a shared kind of consciousness, there was a shared kind of concern. If there is a marriage at my house, then the entire village will be concerned. If there is a function in somebody else's house, I along with the entire village will be concerned, and we will all try to contribute, because when there is a program in my house, I will also expect the others to contribute. So, this kind of system was prevalent in the earlier times. What happened next? Next, we had the Industrial Revolution. And during this revolution, you will know that at this point of time, machines came into existence, science boomed and produced the newest ways in which life can be more comfortable. And as this kind of inventions were taking place, these machines were moved to a particular space where they were stored and made as a part of production of materials, mass production of a particular material. And these machines could not work on their own, so they required some skilled labor who can manage those machines. So these skilled labor were very expensive. Those who were able to manage those machines, they demanded quite a lot of money. So what the investors or the factory owners did, what the people who are running the business did, they started training the poor from the villages and giving them that kind of education so as to only being able to operate that kind of machine and bring them as cheap labor. Because there is no concept of money in the villages, and money is something which is specifically being earned at an industry, at a power position where there is something called the capitalistic society going on. And once there is an existence of such kind of system, everybody started thinking that we need money. We need money to buy the things, because the farmers who are raising the crops, they cannot buy bicycle just by giving a share of their crop. The bicycle seller would demand money. So if you are going to buy machines, if you are going to buy things that will make your life easier, you will need to pay them in green. But these rural people, they did not have money, so they were forced to go to the cities. Now, if you leave your land, you go to the city which is being built, there are lots of factories in the city where you can earn money. But if you are leaving all the things, your kettles, your land, your family, your children, your aging parents, who's going to take care of that? So therein comes the role of a woman. She is going to take care of the child because she has bore the child, she can feed the child, she can nurture the child. She can also take care of the cattle, because the hens, the ducks, the cows, buffaloes, goats, everything that can be taken care of can be cared for by a woman. And of course, the old people of the house, the aging mother, the aging father, the aging mother-in-law, the aging father-in-law, they can all be attended to by the woman. But just if you think of the opposite, if the woman goes to the so-called city, if the woman goes to this place, the woman is likely to get lost, because it is thought that she does not have that kind of education, she does not have that kind of rationality. Most importantly, she does not have that physical strength to overthrow if somebody is attacking her. So this was the best option, that the women, they should stay, protect the house, protect the children, care for the old, and the men would go to the cities to earn money. That created this entire public and private divide. So the private realm, the personal realm, became the one where women is taking care of the children, the domestic animals, taking care of the old people in the house, and the men are going to earn money. That is how the entire system of housewives generated, and housewives came into existence. Next, we find that the shifted economy, here I have already discussed these points over here, and the modern practice is that of a nuclear family. What is a nuclear family? The nuclear family is a husband, a wife, and a child. There will be nobody else inside the family. Earlier, the concept was that of a joint family where the parents, the relatives, the in-laws, everybody lived together. There was a shared kind of responsibility, sense of duty. Everybody enjoyed the shared responsibility and duty. In the nuclear family, you are the one, if you are a man, you go out and you earn money. If you are a woman, you stay at home, care for your child, and that's all about it. Next, moving on to what is personal is political. Just think about the last statement we discussed. We discussed that the personal realm of a woman became the child. The child is the focus of the woman. She must nurture it, raise it as beautifully, as graciously, as rationally as possible. That is the sole purpose of the woman. That became the realm of the woman. She will be a caregiver, she will be a nurse for the old, and she will become the mistress of the house, where she will be giving orders to the servants, right? So these are the ways in which she was expected to function in the society. This slogan, the personal is political, is also called the private is political. It is a political slogan expressing a common belief among feminists that the personal experiences of women are rooted in their political situation and gender inequality. So, before moving on to understand the entire definition, that is something which I discovered from Britannica, and it is written by Carol Hanisch, this particular description about the phrase. Before moving forward, we just need to understand what is political, because of course by now we understand what is personal, but we are yet to identify in which way should we interpret the word, which way should we understand the meaning of the word political. Politics, according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, please note that it is the fifth meaning. Before that, it had several other meanings which were not relevant to this particular explanation or reading. The total complex of relations between people living in society. So, if there are people living in a particular society, there will be a lot of interactions. I will be talking to this person, that person is going to talk to that person. There will be a lot of interactions, and in those interactions, I will be interpreted in a way to this person will go and say to that person, oh, she is like that. Then that person is going to say to another person, oh, that person is like that. So there is always interaction and indirect interaction, direct interactions in the society. As a result, there is a kind of collective consciousness. So one event, 5 people notice that there has been an accident. 5 people, you take the report of 5 people, they will likely to vary in many details. I will not say most, but somebody might have noticed that it was 5:30 when the accident took place. The other person did not see the watch. The other person would say, oh, the sun was setting when the accident took place. Another person was completely not concerned to what the time was, said, when the accident was taking place, I was going to fetch my mother from the station, railway station. So these kind of experiences, these kind of interpretations of the same event, one person is looking it as a thing that is happening apart from that person going to fetch his mother from the railway station. Somebody is just standing there, spending their own time, and they are actually keeping a track of the time at which the accident is taking place. So the context varies. The same event is going to be represented in a different way for any particular individual. So in politics, or especially how can we define the political, women were generally not given rights. Women were originally not allowed to vote. They did not have the right to vote, and they had to beg for the right to vote. They came together, they went for movements, they signed petitions, Why did they want the right to vote? Because they wanted to be responsible for the selection of the representatives to the parliament. If they do not have representation in the parliament, then nobody is going to know or want to know or even care for what are the problems a woman is facing during her lifetime. If somebody is there who is going to represent them in the parliament, then the women will also have a right to say, that women will also have a right to make a decision in favor of the country's entire progress. So originally women were not thought capable of that decision. That is why they were not given any rights regarding suffrage. Suffrage is the right to vote. So we can understand political as when the minority opinion, which is the personal opinion, that becomes a majority opinion, which is the public opinion or the political opinion. That change is very much required by women. So the personal is the minority opinion because women were thought to be minorities, and the political becomes the majority opinion because once you are represented in the parliament, in the government, you become a kind of majority because that by that time you have had followers, you are also becoming a part of the power. So when you are trying to convert your personal opinions of your inconveniences, your exploitation, your alienations, all of these, you are trying to send the message to the power that this will not be tolerated any further. You take help of politics of representation. So the personal must become the political in order, that is the personal realm where she is a caregiver, where she is in charge of the household chores, she is doing all the household works. This is the personal periphery of women, and this must also be included in the politics of the state, because this is how the woman is nurturing the future generation and is taking care of the generation which has already served the country. So they are doing a kind of labor for which they are not being paid and not even acknowledged. So that kind of acknowledgement would obviously mean that they will receive a kind of status which would also shower them with some privileges, if not equality. So the political rights that we talk about, the primary one is suffrage. Suffrage means right to vote. Vote is power, representation at the government level. So once you are electing a candidate, you have somebody to represent you at the topmost power levels of the country. Women's grievances would be redressed at an official level. So now whatever the personal, the public, the private sphere is, it will now be officially addressed. If you have a family problem, nobody will say that your husband is going to solve it. Now you have the right to go to a court. Now you have the right to drag a husband who is abusing a wife domestically to the court of law and say that this is no more a personal matter, this is a matter of political injustice. I have the right to demand justice from the government because I have given vote, I have cast the vote to elect the government that is in power. In 1791, Charles Maurice de Talleyrand Périgord gives a report to the French National Assembly. He writes a report and submits it. Among many other things, there are some very interesting points which relates to the kind of education women should receive according to him. He observes that women are very emotional, they have an excess of it, and that emotion jeopardizes their ability to think rationally, jeopardizes their capacity for intellectuality. That also restrains their intellectual faculty from abstract thoughts. That is, they cannot think clearly. That is what this person was trying to say. So, he suggested that women must only receive domestic education for the pleasure of men. Men are the center of the family and women are the periphery, the people who are at the, if men is the axis, women will be surrounding this axis and revolving around this particular axis. If men is the center of this point, then women will be the periphery of this point and it will revolve the existence of men like a satellite. So, women, he was expecting that they will only be a satellite and provide the, for example, Earth has a satellite called Moon. Moon gives us light at night. We think we are very grateful to the moon for doing that, but we know this is actually the sun's light which is being reflected, not going into the scientific explanation. What is happening is that it is only the satellite and not the planet. The planet is the Earth still. So, it is at a hierarchically advantaged position. So, here if this is the man, this is the woman. She is going to take care of the kids because the kids are going to keep the dynasty of the man alive. She is going to take care of the household duties because that is how the man, after working throughout the day, will come back and expect a glass of water, a cup of tea, a warm bed, a nice dinner. These are the things the man is going to expect, and the woman must live up to the standard. That was the mentality of this particular person. He expressed it very well in his report. In 1792, this is a very important year because Mary Wollstonecraft, she wrote a very short treatise titled A Vindication of the Rights of Women with Stricture on Political and Moral Subjects. Here she attacks the writing of this person. She says that Perigord cannot say something like that. It is not at all ethical when he says that women are incapable of clear thoughts or clarity of thoughts. She says that, okay, she is an 18th century British proto-feminist. She is called a proto-feminist because proto means something which happened before feminism, and before feminism there was no mention of equality. When feminism came, it started to say that women are better, women are this, women are that, but they did not talk about gender equality. They did not say that no, men and women are on the same level. They always tried to say no, women are better, women are this. That created a problem. She was a proto-feminist. She was not even saying that women are equal. She said women must have the right to rational education and pursue careers in arts, business, etc. So, that woman should not be restrained and locked up in the room, in the house, within the private sphere. She should not be allowed, she should not be dictated into staying as a housewife. She should be encouraged to take up education. She should be encouraged to pursue a career, to earn money. Those are the things that Mary Wollstonecraft emphasized, and for that this particular essay is very important because this paved the path for feminism in the upcoming days. Now, what happened before, a little before that? Why did Mary Wollstonecraft write a treatise like that all of a sudden? There was the culture of conduct books. Conduct books are books where instructions were given to women how they should lead their lives. These are the instructions that were given. The conduct books said what is an ideal woman and what must be her duties. The Whole Duty of a Woman, or An Infallible Guide to the Fair Sex, 1753. William Kenrick, English novelist, playwright and translator. This particular person, William Kenrick, he wrote this entire book called The Whole Duty of a Woman. What were the topics covered? Let us see. rules, directions and observations for their conduct. Their here means women's, and behavior through all ages and circumstances of life as virgins, wives or widows. Very, very important. All of these three words represent the sexual activity of a woman. Very ironic, because he could have said mother, daughter, sister, but no, he tried to focus on virgins, that is the one who is not married, wives, that is the sexually active women, especially sanctioned by the government because you have the certificate, widows, that ones who had the experience but due to the death of their husband they are no more sexually active, with rules in every kind of cookery. This book not only asked them or directed them how you should live your life. If you are a virgin, if you are not married, what kind of manners should you show? What should be your appearance in front of other people? How should you laugh? How should you sneeze? How should you put and fold and put your handkerchief in your bag? Everything, the hand movements, the hair, the eye movements, everything were written down in these books. And that is suitable for the virgins. Now for the wives there are separate parameters. If you are a virgin, then you cannot laugh a lot. If you are a wife, you can laugh a little. And if you are a widow, you should always be grumpy and you should not laugh, you should always be sad. This kind of viewpoints were taken up by these people of that time. And of course, these are patriarchal. Apart from that, with rules to every kind of cookery. So, it was also a cookbook, that you cook this food like this, you have to cook with this, you have to cook it that, who should cook what and for whom, all those things. You have, if you want to win a man's heart, you must cook this. If you are trying to please your husband, you should cook this. If you are trying to forget your husband and lead a life without being sexually attracted to a person, you must cook this and eat this. All of these sorts of things were written in these books, and they were called conduct books, that how a woman will conduct herself. Another book, An Inquiry into the Duties of the Female Sex, was published in 1797. It was published by a person, written by a person called Thomas Gisborne. He was a clergyman, a poet and an author. Previously also saw he was an English novelist, William Kenrick, and a playwright and a translator. So they are not just anybody, they are actually literate men. They have dealt with literature a lot, they have composed literature, and now they are writing these books as if from their vantage point of view, because they are influential, they know they have a readership. So Gisborne is a clergyman, that is, that person belongs to the institution of the church. So this person also has some sort of influence on the people. What are the topics covered? Differences between men and women. Okay, so men are this, women are that. There are clear demarcations between these two genders. Female education, choosing a husband, raising children, how women should spend their free time. This is very important. What is the concept of free time that Gisborne was talking about? Is it something which will make her write literature? Is it something which will make her think about or rethink about the things she has been doing and not doing? Maybe she wanted to do something else, maybe she wanted to develop a hobby, maybe she wanted to go somewhere, visit some places, write something, read something. But these conduct books did not allow that kind of privileges to women. They specifically prescribed that if you are a woman, your free time should be invested in doing household works, which will enlighten or brighten the quality of the household appearance. So, these conduct books went on to formulating the angel in the house. That is what these conduct books aimed at. They wanted to create the image of the angel of the house, that if there is a house, there is a guardian angel who takes care, who keeps clean, who wears nice dress. That is the idea which was projected into the minds of all the working husbands, that when you go home, you will have a loving wife who will look like an angel, who will keep you warm at night and will give you good food. And that is why you will feel thankful for the entire life, redeemed of your sins. So the very word angel has some kind of Christian connotations along with it, that it is a kind of household moral value of being an angel inside the house. That book also said that novels are addictive and secretly corrupt women's minds. So women must never read novels, because by that time novels had already started evolving and people were writing very good novels, realistic novels. Gisborne was thoroughly against it. He wanted that women should not read novels. If they read novels, then they act differently. These were the characteristics which were prescribed by the so-called conduct books, that the woman should be homely, should stay at home, take care of all the aspects of home, like I have previously discussed, caregiver, faithful. She must not go away with other men, she must not make any other male friends, or any other men should come and pay visit to her. Presentable, she must have a good appearance. She just cannot come out and receive her husband. When her husband comes back from the work, she must put on the best dress and act as if she has been waiting for him throughout the day. Restrained and respectable movement. Like I said before, you cannot open your mouth wide. You will have to make minimum lip movements while eating. Even eating, you cannot take a good lump sum bite of a biscuit. You'll have to cut it and make it into a small piece and then put it gently inside your mouth. That is what kind of micromanaging these conduct books were doing. They were saying that if you open your mouth and eat a sandwich, then you are not a good woman. You are creating an image that you are a very careless kind of woman and you do not respect the norms of the society. What a shame if a man will see that a woman is eating or gobbling down a sandwich. What kind of image will it give to the man? And it is a shame. Women were humiliated for this. They were humiliated into believing that following the conduct books will make them attractive and will of course attract many rich bachelors. This is what the idea was, that if you wanted to become the angel in the house and the rich bachelors would try to get an angel inside their house, you will have to follow these kind of steps. Now, we have the author Jane Austen. She is the famous writer of Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility. Very famous author for portraying the kind of rationality that women characters can show at that point of time. She said something about this book. She said, "I'm glad you recommended Gisborne." So when she was not getting married to anybody, somebody came and said that you must read that book. It is very unwomanly of you that you are not marrying, and you must go and read that book and carry yourself like a woman. She replied with this statement that I'm very glad. Okay, good. You told me that I should go and read that book. But for having begun, I'm glad you recommended Gisborne. For having begun, I took the book. I started reading it. I am pleased with it and I had quite determined not to read it. I find it very pleasing, very nice of you, but I am not going to read it. Because of course we know why she is not going to read it, because whatever is written in there is absolutely illogical, irrational and prescriptive, which of course Austen, who was an author of her time, would never approve of. The mad woman in the attic. Now this is the image which is exactly opposite to the angel in the house image. This is exactly the opposite to the image of the angel in the house. So if there is a good presence, there is always a bad presence. This bad presence is the mad woman in the attic. In 1847, let us first talk about how the term originated. Charlotte Bronte, we have discussed Bronte sisters in details in one of the lectures. Charlotte Bronte in 1847 wrote a novel called Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre, she falls in love with a particular person who is way above her age, and at one particular point of time that person gets to know that Jane loves him. He proposes marriage, they are going to get married, when suddenly somebody comes and says that this person, that is Rochester, Rochester is the name of the other person whom Jane wanted to marry, Rochester is already married, and that he has a wife whom he locked up in the room upstairs. Rochester kept his wife, who was descending into madness, secretly locked in an attic apartment by her husband. Rochester kept his wife, who was descending into madness, secretly locked in an attic apartment. So, this particular woman, whom Jane thought was a mad woman, was actually the wife of Rochester, and she was descending into madness, and Rochester did not want to tell anybody about the condition of his wife, and that he also confessed to Jane that he was forced to marry this woman. He did not want to marry this woman, and later on she set the house on fire, killed herself by jumping from the roof. Not only did she descend into madness, in one of the feats of madness, she set the entire house on fire, and the house burnt down, house of Rochester, and before the house burned down, she went to the roof and jumped and killed herself. This particular story shows that woman, the character of that woman. We never come to meet that woman, we just see that somebody sneaks up and cuts Jane's bridal gown, somebody sets fire to a particular room, somebody comes here and there moving around. These particular presences in the house shows us that there is some kind of evil power. The projection is that of a monster, something which is just the opposite of the angel in the house. And this mad woman who is locked up in that attic room over there is that particular person who is creating all this nuisance. Finally, Jane gets to know that the house has burned down. Rochester wanted to save the woman. The name of the woman is Bertha, or what Rochester called her, Bertha. And when he went to save Bertha, he himself was burned, but Bertha went away and to the roof and jumped and died. That is what the story is. Jane came to know of it later on. He again proposed to Jane. Jane accepted this time, and they lived happily ever after. The mad woman in the attic then became a very popular phrase. The woman writer and the 19th century literary imagination, this particular thing is a book, 700 pages long book by Sandra Gilbert and Susan Guber. There, these two particular authors talk about the novels of Jane Austen, Mary Shelley, Charlotte and Emily Bronte, George Eliot, Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Of course, Browning is an author, she is a poetess. Christiana Rossetti, also a poetess, and Emily Dickinson, again a poetess. So, all of these authors were discussed and shown that how images of the mad woman in the attic come to their writings. There were therefore two images: the angel in the house, which was created by the conduct books, and literature which were written by women who also created a kind of concept that instead of the angel in the house, there can also be the mad woman in the attic. They produced these kind of dichotomy, that there will either a woman can be the angel in the house, or the woman can be the mad woman in the attic. Here Virginia Woolf, she comes up with a very good statement. Killing the angel in the house was part of the occupation of a woman writer. So, in order to stop this kind of dichotomy of happening, that a woman can be either the angel in the house or the mad woman in the attic, we must try to kill that angel first. That concept of ideal woman, that the ideal woman should be the person who takes care of the children and the husband and the old and never complains and is always presentable, never has any kind of demands from the family. This kind of ideal woman, that image we must try to destroy, because all the women cannot fit to that particular image, and if they do, they will do so unwillingly. Ellen Showalter, she is a very prominent feminist critic. She writes an entire article titled "Killing the Angel in the House, the Autonomy of Women Writers." Showalter then says that the women writers must have the autonomy. They must write what women's experiences are. They must not try to affirm or reaffirm to the idea, to the concept which has been coming down. All these authors we saw in the previous slide, they have always subscribed to that concept that either there is an angel or there is a demon, there is a monster. But we alone as women writers, we must take up the pen and write off this kind of dichotomy, this kind of division. Male gaze. Women characters in Victorian literature were either pure, angelic or monster. This is what the male gaze is about. The males looked at women from that perspective. That perspective was accepted by the pre-discussed women authors. They subscribe to that idea. That idea is not the women's perspective. That is the typical male gaze, that when you look at a woman who is angry, you call her hysteric. When you look at a woman who is sad, you call her depressed. You label her and you try to make that a model, and you try to fit other female characters, other women in your life into that set model. That way, you also encourage other female members of your family to look at other female members of the same family with that kind of perspective. Women writers need to break this dichotomy and must kill the aesthetic ideal through which they themselves have been killed into art. So these novels that have been written till now, they are of course very good forms of art. They have been praised for their artistic quality, the way the descriptions have been given, the way the human emotions have been penned down on the pages. They are unanimously very good arts. So when this kind of art is creating this particular kind of image and this particular kind of dichotomy, that is two sides, we are commanding us to think in the binary code of law. That particular aesthetic, that style of appreciation, that style, that understanding of beauty of the art must be written off, and it will only start if we start writing as women writers, because we are not going to follow that kind of dichotomy. We are going to write our own minds. Seek self-definition and defy the male gaze. I will, as a woman writer, will not judge myself based on what the males have to say about me. If you are a man and you say that you are doing this wrong, you are doing that wrong, you have not achieved this, you have not done that, I am not going to judge myself on that parameters. I know what I have done, I know what the sacrifices I have made, I know the compromises I have made. So if I have to measure my accomplishments, if I have to rate myself, it should be my own parameters and not somebody others, especially belonging to the opposite sex. This is a rewriting, a revisiting of Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre. This is where we are introduced to the writer who is writing herself and is resisting that kind of confinement. We just talked about Rochester's wife, and we don't know how she descended into madness, why she descended into madness. We had no such details, but that she was a gothic figure, she was haunting the house like a ghost, and she was the demon of the house, the mad woman in the attic. This particular novel, White Sargasso Sea, is written by Jean Rice, and she writes it from the woman's perspective, that woman's perspective who was locked up. Antoinette, a Creole woman from Jamaica, she is forced to marry an Englishman. She does not want to marry that Englishman. Forced marriage to Rochester. Rochester is the person in Jane Eyre whom Jane proposes to, who emotionally abuses her, because Rochester is an Englishman and Antoinette is a Caribbean woman. She is not the class of the Englishman. She does not speak the proper English. She speaks Creole English, and that way she is considered to be a lower class with respect to that of Rochester. Whenever this kind of hegemonical condition takes effect, there will always be a dominating party and always be a dominated party. So Rochester here dominates Antoinette. Instead of trying to become a good husband or at least beginning their life as husband and wife, he emotionally abuses her, stays very cold, never offers any kind of love. More, he goes and has some affairs with women outside his marriage, that too knowing fully well that Antoinette is aware of that. Antoinette's mother is ill-treated by her caretakers. So, besides Rochester taking away Antoinette, he gives the responsibility of taking care of her mother to some couple, and they mistreat her, ill-treat her, verbally abuse her, do not feed her well. All of these problems makes Antoinette very sad. She cannot do anything because she does not have the power to. She did not have the money. She did not have the proper language. She did not have the authority in the house. All she had was her memories of pains and ill treatment. Rochester takes her to England and locks her up in the attic. Because she was not able to speak the proper English, Rochester thought that it is very shameful if she comes out in public, because she will be speaking some variety of Creole English and people will laugh at her and my societal position will be at risk. So, he locked her up. Antoinette dreams of freedom and the great house going up in flames. Antoinette was locked up for several years. Therefore, instead of recovering from her depression became her daily drama of pain, where Antoinette could have been a very good partner to Rochester, and Rochester could have equally reciprocated that relationship and they could have learned from each other's culture. Rochester thought that their culture is better and Antoinette's is bad, and Antoinette tried to resist that kind of segregation, that kind of marginalization, but to no effect. All she could do was dream of freedom. She wanted to be free, she wanted to go home, she wanted to rescue her mother, but she did not have any kind of freedom even to move out of that particular room. But sometimes she started sneaking with the help of the servant. She loved the servant and the servant also loved her very much. That was an aged woman, a nurse, and the nurse used to take her out sometimes very silently so that nobody would know. At that time, she used to be very frenzied at the sight of the great house and intimidated. Her madness used to take control and she used to go and add fire and destroy things just to show her spite, her anger against the ill treatment Rochester has meted out to her. The novel ends as she leaves her room with a candle. Like we saw that in the earlier novel, Charlotte Bronte's novel, the mad woman who was locked up in the attic, Bertha, here also Antoinette is lovingly called Bertha or mockingly called Bertha by Rochester. Everybody thought that Rochester lovingly calls Antoinette as Bertha, but it is actually a kind of mockery, because Antoinette is not a very English name and Bertha is perfectly good English name. While introducing to somebody else, he would rather prefer Bertha to Antoinette. So, in Jane Eyre we see that Bertha has set the entire house on fire, and then she has gone up, went to the roof and jumped from that roof and has committed suicide. This novel also ends at that point of time where she has taken a candle in her hand and she is going out of the room, and we know how that ends for her. So, this is kind of a suicide attempt, or rather a suicide which has not been written in this particular story. But here it is not the end, but the interpretation of the life. Antoinette is neither an angel in the house nor the mad woman in the attic that we have seen in Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre. She is not mad because as readers we identify with her pain. If we see our own parents suffering, if we see our business being taken over by other people, if we see that we have lost our entire fortune before losing the father, we will also be equally traumatized, and that may impact our mental condition for the upcoming days. Then comes the forced marriage, when you are forced into a kind of relationship that you do not enjoy, where your husband is expecting you to be a certain person, but you cannot live up to that particular standard. It becomes a problem. That all those elements which were predicting, all those elements which were incorporated in Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, we could also see that Jane was the typical, or trying to be the angel in the house, the ideal woman who would love Rochester. Charlotte Bronte says in a letter at that time that she is going to write about a heroine whom nobody but herself would like. So, that is the result. Jane Eyre is the result. Jane had some good qualities. She also had some very bad kind of qualities of judging somebody based on their looks and becoming very irritated at certain situations, misinterpreting witticism for mockery. These qualities were also there in Jane. So, if we say that she wanted to be the angel in the house, that will be a better expression, because she was definitely not an angel in the house. She was somewhere in between. But Rochester's idea of Jane, that is something we would be fascinated, because Rochester has been seeing Jane right from the childhood and they have quite a lot of age difference. But this particular story that Jean Rice writes, Wide Sargasso Sea, in this we find a complete separate account, a second interpretation of Bertha, Rochester's earlier wife. These are some references, you can have a look at them, and once you understand that the personal level, at the personal level, we need to become the breakers of the dichotomy in order to gain that political strength, because the people who are representing us at a higher status, who are higher levels of government, those people will take the generalized opinion. If we do not make ourselves aware, if we do not get the right kind of education, right kind of representation, then women will lose their individuality. They will be treated as a mass altogether. One particular tendency will be thought to be a general tendency. So, we must try to avoid these kind of situation, and most importantly encourage women's writing, encourage women to write. All of these things have been the messages of the writers such as Virginia Woolf, Mary Wollstonecraft and other prominent theorists like Ellen Showalter, Gilbert and Guber. These things needs to be taken care of. So, thank you for watching this lecture. We see you in next lecture.
I am Professor A.K. Sharma and I teach sociology in IIT Kanpur. I am taking up a question, what is world population crisis? World population crisis refers to explosive growth of population which occurred during 1950s and 1960s. For millions of years, some people estimate that perhaps man appeared on this planet Earth 5 lakhs years ago. It took these 5 lakhs years for world population to reach first billion in 1820 AD, and that means that the population in ancient times must have been rising at rate 0.000 something percent per year. Now, in 1950s and 1960s in the world, you find that population started growing at rate more than 2% per year. This is what is meant by population crisis. You can imagine that if a population grows or anything grows at 2% per year, then in about 35 years time it can double. And obviously, particularly in the context of less developed countries, it had implications for poverty removal, for employment generation, for maintaining health, improving life expectancy, raising educational levels, etc., etc. The reason behind this population crisis was improvement in life expectancy or improvement in general health standards of populations. You may not be knowing, or you will be surprised to know that about 100 years ago in our country, life expectancy means average age of death or average age of life, whatever you say, of a newly born child was only 20 years, and today it has reached the level of 68 years. Much of this improvement in less developed countries occurred in 1950s and 60s, and therefore, with improvement in health, improvement in life expectancy or average age of birth, average age of death, population started growing at explosive rates, and people started writing about this. This is population explosion, or this is population crisis. And now one can say that the period of peak growth rate is over, and from 1971 onwards in the world as well as in our country, growth rate of population has started declining. Now, in India you may like to know what is the current growth rate of India's population. Currently India's population is growing at 1.5% per year, and the reason is that after sudden or unexpected improvement in health conditions in 50s and 60s, which led to population crisis, we find that today average number of children has also started coming down. So, there was a time when average number of children per woman was around 11 or 12, now it has come down to 2.5, and therefore, the growth rate of India's population has come down to 1.5%, and we can hope that in the future, means in the coming decades, even if nothing changes on the front of fertility or number of children, India's growth rate of population will decrease further and eventually come to a zero level, as said by the 11th 5-year plan of India. And now the major cause of high growth rate of population is not high fertility, but the age distribution of population. So, we have a high percentage of population at the younger ages, and that is the cause of high rate of growth of population. Eventually, when population of India will also age like population of other developed countries, our growth rate will start falling. Thank you. Now, we will meet in the future.